This is Medic Life TV, a video podcast for EMS professionals with your host, Sean Newton.
Hello everyone and welcome to Medic Life. I'm your host, John Newton, and this is part 2 of episode 7. And our salute to veterans that are in EMS. So the following is an interview with Mr. Russ, and he tells us about his experiences in the Army in Vietnam and his 40 years experience in EMS. So without further ado, everyone, again, thanks for following, thanks for subscribing, and enjoy.
Or evening or morning, whatever's appropriate. Just celebrated Veterans Day, and for me it is kind of special. My father and all my uncles were veterans. My wife was a military brat child, so my father-in-law was active duty and a veteran. My daughter joined the reserves to get her education, so she's a veteran, as is her husband. So we got plenty of them around the area. I originally joined the Army straight out of high school to work for a college career, and upon enlistment chose X-ray as my training field. Now you got to remember the time frame here. We're talking 1966. So Vietnam was going on, and the draft was very active. So
sorry. So you were not drafted. You actually
no, I enlisted when I was 17.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, when I got out, I couldn't even have a drink after my 3 years. But got my original basic training as infantry down at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I'm originally from Chicago, so that was kind of a culture temperature shock.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a different accent there, so yeah.
People tell me I sound like Bob Newhart, but I don't know. I know Emily is not who I go to bed with every night. I do know that part. But after basic training,
a lot of our viewers are probably not going to get that, Russ.
Well, they're too young, I know.
Yeah.
But the military training is at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, right outside of San Antonio. So you take the basic corpsman training, which would be the equivalent of an EMT basic, and then the specialized training. I took my X-ray training there. That's all classroom. That's all didactic. Did the clinical training at Walter Reed, 1,000 bed hospital at the time in DC, and then was assigned to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which doesn't sound overly exciting, but it was a good duty station. It's a fairly new hospital, and other than the prison, the Army Command General Staff College is there. So most of the patients were the wives or the children of the young people attending it. The prison had all their own prisoners to take care of their medical needs. But,
we were talking a little bit before we started this interview, and I was sort of kind of getting some background information. Tell us a little bit more about when you had told me you had to kind of do some traveling across Vietnam to get to that final destination there. And you were telling me how you initially basically started your quote-unquote EMS career in the middle of the Tet Offensive. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Tet Offensive started while I was home on my 30-day leave before I went to Vietnam. And so everybody was telling me you're going to a large air-conditioned hospital right outside of Saigon, 44th of Vac. And we landed at Tan Son Snoot, Vietnam. Tet Offensive started while I was home, watching everybody run through the streets and shoot in Saigon. And the names for the 44th of Vac were called out. Mine wasn't in there. And because I just long named, they tend to spell it. So I got reassigned. Well, I ended up going by airplane to Nha Trang, Vietnam, which was way north, and spent a day there. That was the battalion headquarters. Then they sent me to the company headquarters by the back of a truck. I've been in Vietnam 3 days. They hand me a box of ammo and my weapon, and I'm in the back of the truck, and that's it, you know. Really got that epi response going for that long ride. Got to the company headquarters, and then I was assigned to one half of a platoon. So then I traveled by helicopter, almost ended up being due east from Saigon, about where I started, with a small group of people assigned to 101st Airborne. And the place was called Landing Zone Betty. And it was just south of a little town called Fanthiette. And when I got there, there was the 101st Airborne and a little medic group, about 20, 30 of us there. And even though I was the quote X-ray tech, 90% of my time, if not more, was spent as a medic. And that's where I fine-tuned and got my clinical in trauma as a paramedic to use later on. But skills such as suturing was you waited till someone intoxicated came in, and that was your training aid. IVs were pretty much the same way. Now, the time frame, I got to remember, most of the people in the military were drafted because they weren't in college. Some of the people had the option of joining the military or going to prison. So this is the kind of the group you're working with. And what amazed me, later on, here were people that didn't even graduate from grade school, and they're starting IVs, and they're good at it, because when you're doing 70, 80, 100 a day, you get pretty skilled at it.
So you guys went by the see one, do one, teach one method?
That was it. The group we had, we had like one pharmacist, one lab tech, one X-ray tech, everybody else was medic. And we had 2 ambulances. I converted 3/4 ton trucks, and assigned with us were 2 dust-off helicopter units. So basically they picked them off the field, we triaged and stabilized, and then they went on to one of the other hospitals by helicopter also.
For our younger generation, you keep saying dust off, but you're talking UH-1 November Huey helicopter.
Right. We had eventually, besides the dust off, we had an assault helicopter come along with Cobras and things.
Okay, the Cobras are Apaches. Okay,
yeah. And there were plenty of Hueys just for troop transport for the 101st Airborne there. So normally we waited till the dust off brought the patients in. But when there was a large combat issue, we would jump on a regular helicopter and go out and pick people up too. Now, the medical staff, if you would, was supposed to be a trauma surgeon. That would make sense in a clearing company. We had a dentist. We had a dentist, and the dentist also learned to be a physician. But the physicians we had there, we started with an ophthalmologist who was very sharp. He did do a lot of OJT also. The ophthalmologist was replaced by a urologist. The urologist left. We then had a pediatrician. And when the pediatrician left, we had a family practice guy from down south who never really got going. We're talking a match type facility here. And he expected everyone to be in uniform, and we're going to have an hour of recreational activity, and we're going to show up for formations. He didn't last long.
So he was more of a by-the-book military kind of guy, huh?
Yeah, and of course they promoted him to an administrative position, over our unit.
Yeah.
But it was one of the unique things for me, learning experience. And I got to remember, for our younger people, the Civil Rights Act didn't pass until 1964. So we had a large number of people, and some of them hadn't quite gotten the concept of integration yet from where they were down home. And it didn't take long for everybody to learn that everybody on our side was the same. They all wore green. They all bled red.
Yeah.
And everybody was a brother,
Yeah.
But things I saw, the current hair traction splint that a lot of the people know started as a rigid Thomas splint. And it was just a metal contraption. You took cravats. You didn't have Velcro, didn't have elastic. You took cravats and you made a sling out of them, and you made a windlass. There was no spring. You made a windlass with a stick, and that's how you put traction on the fractured femur.
So the training that you got before you went over there, and we're talking late 60s, and a lot of EMS training was not standard. Well, EMS training kind of almost did not exist. It was just whatever the training you got at the hospital. But how do you think that it compared to some of the more modern day EMS training?
It's a total difference between night and day. And not only EMS training, but the X-ray training that I had. We went from people teaching because they've been in the business for a while, not because they necessarily were good instructors. And originally they read a lot of overheads put on the wall. Then we progressed to reading 35 millimeter slides. And now some people still read PowerPoint slides. But as far as educators, I didn't see that until I joined the paramedic program in the early 80s.
So when you got out, did you stay in EMS, or did you kind of go a different route in healthcare?
Well, when I got out, I had to finish some of my time in an X-ray school because my time in Vietnam didn't count. So I didn't have a radiologist there. So I enrolled and I came to Omaha, Nebraska to go to Creighton University. They had a degree in X-ray. And after I moved here, I looked at their tuition, I looked at the GI Bill, and that wasn't going to happen for a long time. So I finished my X-ray training, but my military background got me a job as an orderly. Now, in those days, you were orderlies or nurse aides, today they're certified nursing assistant. And I made a whopping $1.65 an hour. Now, I had an apartment, I had a vehicle, and I partied. So I don't know where I'm wasting my money now. But
well, that's probably an equation to today's standards of making like $12-15 an hour, though, too. So.
Yeah, life was much easier then. But
cheaper anyway. I don't know about easier, but cheaper.
Finished my X-ray training, and the school I graduated from, they hired me back to be an instructor, and did that for a while, and then went to the VA administration, as a matter of fact. Worked at the VA for a while, and worked my way up to work in the cath lab, and I missed the EMS. I mean, X-ray was, here's an apple, take an X-ray of an apple. Here's a pear, take a picture of an apple, a pear. There's no critical thinking that I had, and I had a lot of skill and experience I thought was being wasted, especially looking around at some of the not to pick on nurses, but the nursing personnel that I worked with. And I'm thinking back to these people with grade school education that had more practical skill because of numbers.
Yeah.
So managed
exposure.
Yeah, that's what it is. And luckily, knew just the right people in the right place at the right time, but they tried a accelerated paramedic program. Up until that time, just about everybody was a paid firefighter, EMT basic. We started the day after Labor Day. We were done the day before Christmas. So straight didactic.
And was this through a college? Was this through a hospital or what?
Well, at that time, the paramedic program was part of the hospital that was attached with the university.
What year was this?
This was back in 1981.
So National Registry was just a rumor.
Well, it became real. I mean, the classroom, we got thrown out of all kinds of places because we were the paramedic students.
Yeah.
So classes were held around schedules. The clinical was all done after that. But I do remember the registry. It was almost like somebody came in with a briefcase handcuffed onto their hand, and everybody was in the room. You got your number 2 lead pencil. You filled in the little dots.
Yeah, my first go at the National Registry was on the dot to dot.
And I can, I'd already taken I still took my X-ray registry prior to that, and the results took like 5 months to get back from the X-ray registry. The paramedic registry only took about 3 months. So that was progress. And then a lot of years later, I did organ donors. So I took the registry for a transplant coordinator, and that was sit down at the computer, walk out the room, and here's your results. Of course, each time it costs a lot more money also.
Yeah, testing has come a long way. It's changed.
And the training, when I first started, most of the classes, again, were nurses or physicians. And I was extremely fortunate. My early instructors included Jeannie O'Brien, who was one of the authors of PHTLS, Twink Dalton, who has since become a national speaker and lecturer, Judy Janning, who does a lot of stuff at the Fire Academy, is also an author and a lecturer, So I was just lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time and get inspired to stay in EMS and become an instructor. The late Mike Smith was in Iowa, right across the river, and I caught some of his classes, and I said, this is the way it should be. So training has tremendous involvement since I first started.
So the years that you rode the ambulance, how did that experience from Vietnam kind of translate?
It gave me a lot more awareness because I rode from 80 to, I did 10 years with one volunteer department, 10 years with another one, dual train fire and EMS. And trying to train the early people. Some people don't like blood, some people don't like poop. And I had gotten a whole lot of anatomy, seeing a lot of death and dying, and no gloves. It's kind of interesting. I was looking at some of the slides I sent you. There's one where they're suturing people up. And not only do they not have gowns and masks on, two of them don't even have a shirt on. And that one slide. I didn't notice the shirt. I didn't notice the gloves, but I didn't notice the shirt. Yeah, two of them don't have a shirt. One of them's a doc without a shirt. The guy with the shirt is a dentist. And then there's a medic there, and it's a little boy whose head was open laceration from a water buffalo. But one of the other slides I showed you were IV bottles, glass bottles, glass IV bottles. And there were just sawhorses everywhere. You just set the canvas litter on the sawhorse, and that's how you worked on them. And plenty of tape on the wall. You just ripped it off and put dressings on. So you have, in some form or fashion, been involved in EMS for 40 plus years. Yeah, and proud of it. I even have my little note from the registry for my 20 years, and then I got one for 30 years. I got a little bit to go before I get the 40-year one, though. I will say thank you for your military service, but man, thank you. I mean, that's impressive to be able to talk to somebody who's still involved and actively involved in EMS and education and stuff, and being able to share that experience. So, I thank you for just sticking around and hanging out with us young folks. Well, part of the group I worked with some outstanding instructors at Creighton University, and we all went our separate way. And then we kind of got together at another college and started teaching. And we kept saying, well, where are the up and coming people? We're doing all these classes. We had a little cadre of instructors. Well, where are we going to pass the torch along? And there weren't a whole lot of people. It seemed the people don't stay in the business as long, I guess. And a lot of it is, I've worked at a couple of different services across the South after I got out of the Marine Corps. And I will say that, there's only been a handful of people that I have seen in the last 20 years that I've been in EMS that stay past that 15-year mark. There's a few of us that are, at the 20-year mark. And I mean, you probably are one of the very few people that, literally probably, I venture to say there might be 150 people that's hit the 40-year mark that are still in it. And I might be overestimating, and heck, I don't know, maybe I'm way underestimating, but I don't know. I haven't met these people. And it's always impressive to see you guys hang out. Yeah, the other people I worked with are more retired than I am. But I've still got my license in Nebraska. I've still got one in Iowa, and my Texas is still good for another year or so. So I work real hard to keep them. It's something, once you earn it, you don't want to give it up. You say, hey, I can do this another 2 years. Yeah, I gotta say, I honestly, and I don't tell too many people, but I almost got out of EMS a couple of years ago, and I found an opportunity to kind of get back into education. I was one of those people. I had worked at some high volume services, and I kind of got to burn out a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm done. And I got a little break there for a little bit. I got back into education, and I see myself probably staying in it for a lot longer now that I've kind of figured out that, and that's the thing, you have to find that happy medium. And I think, after doing this for so long that, you really do. Yeah, I think one of the reasons I stayed in it, I don't know if it's a good news or a bad news thing, but yeah, I was 19 years old in Vietnam, seeing the things going on in Vietnam. And I managed a coping skill. I almost have face blindness because I remember the vital signs. I remember everything except the person's face and the person's name. And I think that's helped me survive all these years. Upset my wife completely because someone will come up and talk to me and she'll say, "Who was that? Why didn't you introduce me?" And I say, "I got no clue what their name is or where I worked with them or anything." So she's learned early on in the conversation, say, "Hey, I'm Russ's wife. Where did he work with you?" You know.
Well, I'm terrible with names. I really am, and it's really bad in this kind of business to be bad with names. But yeah, faces I can remember. I'm like, I know you from somewhere. I just can't remember where. Well, very cool, sir. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you also.
Yeah, I actually did not do any healthcare whatsoever. I was a firefighter in the Marine Corps, so a little different perspective. And it's always fun to talk to you guys that were in the Army. I talked to Jeremy a little earlier, talking to him about the Air Force, talking to some of the guys in the Navy. And, it's kind of interesting to see that a lot of people, once they got out of the military, completely stopped healthcare. And then some people have kind of transitioned and found parts of EMS that they really like and have kind of migrated towards those from basically based off what their experience was in the military. Jeremy and I were actually talking about how much he really likes critical care because of him getting to do so much critical care type stuff when he was in the Air Force. And I think just from talking to you, it seems like that there were aspects that you liked a little better than others. And I know you spent a number of years doing X-ray, but you've kind of hung in there and gotten back to what you really liked was the actual thinking part.
Yeah, what I think is great is there's a mechanism now for the military medics to transition much easier instead of just, well, you have all this experience, but you got to go to an EMTB program and then work your way. So there's a lot of people that I'm sure give up on it. I've been there, done that. Why am I spending the time and the money for things I can probably teach you to do? I'm sure that might be some of it.
Yeah, it's an equivalent now. It really is. There is an equivalency that you're doing the exact same thing. There's a few extra little skills that they may be able to do outside that level, but they all go through those same levels of training initially. So it does make it a little easier for retention. So I guess here's my question for you. In your 40 years of EMS, and you have spent a lot of time in education, do you like what you're seeing, and do you think that we're going in the right direction with EMS education?
I think it started evolving early on, and I think that was because of the people I worked with. And then as I traveled around, it was kind of that regression that people haven't quite caught up. I don't know if the Omaha area was way ahead of its time in education or just the people, because even when I went into organ donors for a couple of years, it was kind of like going back in 15 years the way the education process was. But we're catching up. We're doing the social media. And we're doing things like this, which makes it available for everybody, anywhere, anytime, that's us. And that's necessary. And it's a big advantage getting the international aspect of it, advantage we have with distant CME. I think we're going to keep going, and it'd be nice to get the simulated mannequins available for every training program. And need to work on the proctors too.
Yeah, the social medium kind of, or I guess the internet, if you will, makes it a little harder for us to get some of those aspects in when we talk about education. But you're right. I think that adding in that component of being able to do this through the internet, when we talk about, renewing, I think that brings a benefit to the table.
It makes it a lot more available, even in your quote free time, if you have free time, to catch up on maybe not even your mandatory continuing education. You just see some new product or some new procedure, so you get to pursue it on your own time, whereas you may not have done that in the past. Instead of going in the car and driving 50 miles to listen to someone talk about it.
Yeah, I definitely don't remember that. I don't miss those days. And I do remember them, but I don't miss them. So anyway, well, Russ, it's been fun talking with you. Thanks for being on the show, and come back and hang out with me sometime.
All right. Well, hey, my pleasure. And I'll tell everybody, if I don't see you again, remember, be safe out there.